everyone. My name is Alan Jones, and I give you a very warm welcome to another life story coming to you from Life Stories Worldwide. We bring you stories from across the world, and these stories go out across the world. We're coming up to Christmas very soon, and I would like to wish you all a very happy and joyful Christmas. May you know the wonderful peace that Christmas is all about. We bring you stories from people who've gone through all sorts of challenges in their lives, rejection, addictions, many other things, and how they've overcome and their lives have been transformed. We are live on StreamYard, Zoom, Facebook, and YouTube. You can also watch us live on our YouTube channel, on our website, Lifestoriesworldwide.com. You can watch it on there as well. We have a very interesting, compelling story coming to you today from Glossop in the UK. Nick and Donna Rogers have a wonderful story to tell. They've been through many struggles. Nick was involved in gambling addiction. Donna was a former midwife and taught midwifery. And they ran a cafe called Cafe Jericho, where they saw many wonderful things happen. And so I'm going to ask now for Nick and Donna, if they'd like to come and share their story. We welcome you now to share your story. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Alan.
Thank you so much. It's always a privilege to share what Jesus has done in our lives. And this week, we will be married. We will have been married 21 years. And that is amazing in itself because of what God's done in our lives. And many people 21 years ago didn't think that was possible because of the addiction I had and how it impacted our marriage and wrecked my first marriage. So I'm just going to give a little bit of background. I'm originally from Coventry. I came from a fairly stable household. My dad was a telephone executive. My mum was a homemaker. I had a brother, and he had a lot of illness as a child. He suffered quite badly from illness. My big dream, was to play professional football. All I ever wanted to do as a child was to play for my home city, which is Coventry. And that's the one thing I wanted to do. And I represented my city at football from a young age right through to about 16 years of age, and my county. And I also played cricket for my city and my county. And it was during this time that we used to go to my grand's house a lot, the other side of town. And my brother and I used to take our friends there, and it was a very welcoming home. But that's where we were introduced to gambling. We would play cards, or we would play dominoes for money, not great amounts of money, but that's where that seed of gambling was first sown, certainly in my heart. And then later on, as my brother got older, he started to go to the greyhounds. But because of his illness and the type of illness he had, my parents insisted that I went with him, so that if anything happened to him, even though I was 3 years younger, I would know what to do with him and how to keep him safe. I continued to play sports, and then I had a crazy foot injury. I had a weird growth on one of my toes, which needed amputating, and that took me out the game for a while. And then as I started to recover from that, I went to play for another football team. It was like a feeder club, and they went on a holiday to Belgium playing football. And it was while I was in Belgium, I met my first wife, the person that became my first wife, And yeah, and my dream of playing professional football quickly disappeared because of the injury. And then immediately from school, I started to work. I got a job with a building society in Coventry. But the pressure at home and the disappointment and that feeling of not having made it, there was a lot of high expectation on me to go on and play the game. Sort of really impacted me emotionally. And an opportunity just came to leave home and come up north to Salford. And it's there where I started to gamble a lot heavier. The household I moved into, the culture was entirely different from my own home. It was a lot more unsettled. There was a little bit of crime in there. There was a lot of drinking in there. There was gambling in there. And it wasn't particularly a happy home. But as I grew my relationship with my ex-wife, my gambling just started to sort of spiral more and more out of control. I got a really good job with an American bank in Manchester. I was doing really well. I was successful, even though I was gambling heavily.
Life Stories Worldwide is on YouTube, and it's very easy to subscribe to our channel. Just click the bell and subscribe and receive notifications of when we are live, or simply watch any of our other videos. So check it out and give us a visit.
I was becoming more manipulative, more controlling, but also I was living in a little bit of fear of what the house I was living at the time. But my gambling was really becoming serious, and I was gambling every day in my lunch hour or after work, and it was beginning to impact the relationships.
So my background was quite different to Nick's, really. I grew up in a Lancashire cotton town in Oldham, and my father was in the Merchant Navy. My mum, she worked at one of the cotton mills there, and there was addiction in the family. You know, it was mainly around alcohol in our family, and as I grew up, gradually, I was kind of getting to the point where I just really wanted to leave home. And I decided to do general nurse training on leaving school. So I left school at 16, as you could do then. And I met my future husband, my first husband, at the age of 16. We married at 20. I was nearly finished my training then. And I qualified as a nurse, and then went on to do midwifery training. But as you can imagine, you know, the fact that I worked shifts, the fact that I worked long hours, you know, very often I wasn't at home, really. And gradually, it became apparent that my husband was seeing other women while I was working or while I was away from home. And, you know, gradually, that just got worse. It just got more and more difficult to live together as these affairs came to light. And you know, I got to a stage where I suppose I followed suit, really, you know, and we ended up living in this very unhappy situation, really. Work was very difficult and just kind of took all my energy, really. And yeah, so that's where I was. You know, we didn't have any children. There was just the two of us. And yeah, it didn't make for a very happy situation.
So marrying very young, I was 20 when I got married, and we had 2 children in the first couple of years of being married. I was doing really well with this American bank. I was working in a specialized area. I was working in shipping. I was really enjoying my job. But money was too easy to come by, and I was taken out cheap. We could borrow money from the bank, and I was taking out cheap loans, but I wasn't taking out the loans to buy anything. I was taking out the loans to gamble. And as soon as I paid part of the loan off, I would max it back up again. But I was also maxing my credit cards up, maxing my overdraft up. So the pressure was really, really telling on me emotionally. As I said before, I was becoming more controlling, more aggressive. The pressure of the debts, the pressure of the letters coming through the letterbox at home, the telephone calls from people I owed money to. But it was at this period I had we had one of the smallest babies ever born. Even I'm talking in 1982, a baby that wasn't expected to survive, and my young son did survive, but he was only a pound born. But I was going out and gambling, worried, and that's what I turned to. But it was at that time that I first admitted I got a gambling problem to my father, who helped pay some of the debts off. But his words to me were, "You mustn't tell anybody." And all that did was, I took those words on board. All that did was just drive my addiction deeper and deeper and further underground. And my lying got better, my cheating got better. And yeah, I was just so much more secretive. And it was really beginning to impact massively on my mental health. I could be irrational, aggressive, abusive, controlling. I wouldn't let anybody see the bank statements. I wouldn't let anybody have any money in the house or whatever. I was worried about who was going to knock on the door. You know, the worry of bailiffs coming knocking on the door, the worry of the phone calls, who will pick the phone call up. So my behavior became much, much more controlling. And then not long after that, my job relocated down to Kent, and I loved it down there. I was like almost living the life of a single man. But I continued to achieve in my job miraculously, although I was gambling heavily every lunchtime and after work. I was a frequent visitor to the Greyhound stadiums. I went to Catford quite regularly. I won some, I lost a lot. No gambling win ever was sufficient. All it was for me was ammunition. All it was a means to an end, because gone out of my head the thoughts of, well, if I win big, it will do us good in the family. It never stayed in my pocket long enough. Understandably, my wife was unsettled. She was in a foreign city.
If you would like to speak to us here at Life Stories Worldwide, you can, simply by dialing +44 7943 550287. Call us now.
Foreign place, far away from her parents in the northwest, and eventually she decided to move back up north. But that just played into my hands. I stayed put. I did a little bit of work abroad, and I was almost, as I say, living the life of a single man. I was doing football at the weekends and gambling heavily. But in 1987, any football fans might know that Coventry City got to the FA Cup final. And in 1987, I had backed Coventry to win the cup at big odds, and I stood to win an awful lot of money. But after the quarter-final round, somebody offered me £100 cash for my ticket. And being the gambler I was, and being that I never could keep hold of the money, I took the £100. Ye of little faith, I say. After that, I went and had a mini breakdown. I stopped going to work. I didn't answer the door to anybody. I didn't answer the phone. And eventually, somebody knocked on the door midsummer, a few weeks later, and they were from the bank, and they said they were shocked at how I looked because I dropped a lot of weight. And they asked me to come into the branch in the afternoon. And they said everything would be all right. They would help me. They would sort me out. I was to go home and come back on Monday. And when I got back on Monday, I wasn't allowed to pass the security. I was handed a letter, handing my possessions out the drawer, and had been sacked. I then had to sell my house. It was right in the middle of the first massive price increases in the 80s. House prices were just going through the roof, and I had to sell my house. I had to sell my house to pay debts off. So I did that really quickly because it was in the boom, and I moved back up north, and we agreed to give marriage a second go. So we bought another house back in Salford, and I got another job with a major sports retailer. I did okay at that, but that job only lasted about 12 months because the gambling was rearing its ugly head yet again. We then were given, my wife was working at the time for a local shop, and they wanted to get out. And ironically, they had won Littlewoods Pools a couple of times, some significant amounts of money, and they offered to sell us the shop at rock bottom prices. We bought it. It was cash rich. It was very successful. But one month in, after 1 month, I couldn't keep my hand out the till. The debts were growing. I wasn't paying the bills. And then that March, I won big time at the races. I won enough money to put everything right. I won enough money to employ somebody. I won enough money for us all to go on a lovely family holiday, sort everything out, and start again. But in 4 days, I lost over £90,000. In those 4 days, I started to spend heavily on the business. 4 months later, I was shown the door. 4 months later, after 19 years of marriage in my first marriage, the end had come. I'd got nowhere to go. Everybody had turned their backs on me, including my family in the Midlands. But who could blame them? My mental health was so bad at this time. I had attempted suicide a couple of times. And eventually I was admitted into a psychiatric ward in Salford. And there I was for 5 months. That was around Millennium. And it was on Millennium Day, I walked off the unit. I walked off the unit about 8:30 in the morning. And I was found about 14 hours later in Buell Hill Park after walking all around Salford, all around the edge of Manchester. And all I got thoughts of all through the day was how could I kill myself? And I'd bought myself some petrol. I bought myself a lighter. And I was sat in the pitch black on Millennium Day after the celebrations of the night before. I could hear them when I was in hospital and all the rockets and everything. And it was then I sat on a bench and I just wanted to destroy myself. And it was then that I cried out to God for the first time. And I was rescued at that particular time. 2 police officers came out the pitch black. One of them shouted my name and said, "Nick, don't do it." I was taken back to the hospital. I was stripped off. I was taken back to the hospital. And although I didn't know God at the time, I didn't know Jesus at the time, something happened that night. There was a shift, because over the next few weeks, there was a male nurse who came alongside me, who spoke to me, who ministered to me, who was really, really good with me.